Hello, everyone out there in Radio Land and Podcast Land. This is the Dan Beasley Show coming to you from Hartsville, South Carolina. It's 8:23 a.m. on 4/27/2013. A little chilly this morning inside. Outside, I'm sure the birds are not shivering and everything is nice, and it's going to be sunny today, I think. Probably going to reach in the upper 70s, maybe the low 80s. I'm bringing to you a word of scripture from the Bible. For those of you who think the Bible is an antiquated, outdated book, it's still the best-selling book in the world, and it has been so ever since it was first printed. And almost every home has one, but some homes you have to blow the dust off of it in order to get into it. However, this word has a meaning for today's world, and it's called a little work, a little pay. And it starts out in Matthew 20, verse 1. For the kingdom of heaven is like unto a man that was a householder who went out early in the morning to hire laborers in his vineyard. And when he had agreed with the laborers for a shilling a day, he sent them into his vineyard. Okay, a shilling was a monetary value back then. Verse 3, he went out about the third hour. He saw others out there in the marketplace standing idle. In the third hour, he went, in verse 8, and when evening was come, he hired other people on the third hour, to go to work for the same price. Verse 8 says, and when evening come, the Lord of the vineyard said unto his steward, call the laborers and pay them their hire, beginning from the last until the first. Well, whenever you get into the depth of this scripture, you find some being hired early in the day, some being hired at noon, and some being hired in the evening for the same salary. And when the evening come, the Lord of the vineyard said unto his steward, call the laborers and pay them their hire, beginning from the last until the first. So he gave preference to the ones that he hired last to pay them off first. Okay, and when the evening came and they did so, every man received a shilling. Now, in today's time, you would say, that's not fair. That's not fair. How can that be fair? I mean, some of the people worked all day long and gave more effort to putting in to labor than the people that were hired at the end. However, verse 10 says, and when they first came, they supposed that they would receive more when the first came, and likewise they received a shilling. And when they received it, they murmured against the householder. And they said, these last have spent but 1 hour, and thou hast made them equal to us. For we have borne the burden of the day in the scorching heat. Verse 13 says, but he answered and said to one of them, friend, I did thee no wrong. Did thou not agree with me for a shilling? But he answered and said to one of them, the answer is given as an example of what he said to them all. He says in verse 14, take up which is thine and go thy way. It is my will to give unto this last, even as unto thee. Take up which is thine and go thy way, and don't stop to argue. And verse 15 says, it is not lawful for me to do what I will with my own. In other words, the landowner was saying, is it not my money to give? Says, is I evil because I am good? Is I'm evil because I'm good? Evil eye is a synonym for jealousy. It originated from the malicious leer which the jealousy regards its object. And the Lord had done no wrong to those who had labored the longest, for he had paid them for what they had bargained for and earned. If he chose to be generous and with those whose misfortune had prevented them from being hired earlier in the day, no one had any cause to murmur. So what he's saying here is it wasn't those people's fault that they were hired last. They just weren't given that opportunity at that time. So in verse 16 it says, so the last shall be first and the first last. And this parable has been misunderstood. It's a maxim. It acts as a safeguard. Um, and it's a maximum that cannot be applied to Judas, for he then stood high in honor and afterwards into great disgrace. Yet he stands outside of the pale of the maxim as interpreted by the parable, which is the parable both was the first and the last were received and rewarded by their master, while Judas was rejected of Christ and received no reward. The term last, therefore, must be applied to those who were included among the accepted laborers, and not who were excluded from that class. So, you got that same situation today, folks. You got people working and bargaining for all kinds of labors and wages, doing jobs cheaper now. The competition is greater, and some people are just idle because they haven't been asked to go to work. Is it their fault? No, it's not. Not necessarily. They have tried and tried and tried, and they tried to prove themselves, and they tried to go out and pursue work, and work eluded them. And if they were hired at the end of something for the same amount of money that the other people had contracted for up front, this parable would apply to them. And now I know what some of you are doing. You're probably murmuring right now. You're probably saying, well, I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have done it. But then again, when you think about it, it was all under the control of the man who was giving out the salary, and it was all under the control of the timing of the event as to when these people became available. And due to their availability, the crops or whatever labor they were doing may have been at a critical point, and these people were hired at a higher rate in order to compensate for that. One can only fill in the gaps and conjecture on that. And anyway, that's our biblical part of how the Bible applies to our everyday lives today. And people are people, and they've never changed. So you've got stuff going on that still apply to the Bible. The Bible is still up to date, and it's still a day is still way ahead of itself. Actually, is still waiting for us to catch up with it. So anyway, we're going to leave now, and we're going to go into this today's news, which we've all been hearing about. The body of the unclaimed bomber Tamerlan Tarsanev remains unclaimed for more than a week following his death in a gun battle in Watertown, Massachusetts. And his widow, which he was married, she retreated to North Kingston, Rhode Island, home of her parents after the arrest. Her lawyer did not respond to repeated requests for comment on Friday. On the U.S. front, Tacoma, Washington police are up in arms about having to return pot that they had seized at a traffic stop and says they can be found in contempt of court if they do not return the pot. They have been told to appeal or comply by the city attorney, and the pot was seized May of last year when an officer pulled over a Tacoma man for speed, and he was cited for driving without a license, misdemeanor marijuana possession. Prosecutors dismissed a drug charge in December after state voters decided to legalize small amounts of the drug. Robertson then asked for his pot back and provided proof of medical marijuana authorization. The city refused. It led to the court's order on February 28th, and the matter was not settled until May the 2nd, and it could possibly go to higher courts. But it's Tacoma's case, says the sheriff, and if they want it, they can come get it. Although they said that there is contemptuous behavior here, they added it was a quagmire. It was a conflict of state and federal law. Moving on, we've got news of the death of a country legend, George Jones, and he was held. Him and Tammy Wynette was once held as Mr. and Mrs. Country Music. And they even painted that across their side of their tour bus back in the early 70s. But they weren't married long. Wynette died in her sleep at age 55. Jones passed away after being hospitalized for fever and irregular blood pressure at age 81. Both of them were superstars in their own right. Both of them had songs like Tammy Wynette, Stand By Your Man, and everybody thought that was a song about her relationship with George Jones. However, she had released that song earlier, before she ever met him. So anyway, George's daughter looks at him with adoration, and she looks at him as as being a big influence in her life. So we've got all that going on. Plus, we've got 3.5 Men. One of the actors, the actor that plays the half part, is grown up, and he will not be back for the 11th season, which is now pending. And he will be making some spot appearances. However, he's leaving because he had indicated his desire to go to college and originally planned to leave last season until he had a change of heart at last minute, signed on to return. But he's only appeared sporadically on the show this season, and the young actor's ill-advised comments and a religious video testimonial in which he called 2.5 Men filth went viral in November, and Jones later apologized and subsequently returned to work. So that's the Hollywood story, and now we're moving on to the rest of the world's news. What we're finding is a lot of investigation still going on with the bomb in Boston. They're still trying to piece together what exactly happened. The surviving bombing suspect has left the hospital and is now in prison. And they're trying to figure out why he was questioned for like 16 hours before he was